I'm 81 years old, and I'm sitting in a house that's too quiet. The walls are lined with certificates, awards, and plaques that once meant everything to me. But tonight, as I look around this empty living room, I realize something I should have understood decades ago. All those extra hours, all those missed moments, all that overtime I worked to feel secure, it didn't buy me safety. It bought me loneliness. And now, at the end of my life, I'm left wondering if I made the biggest mistake a person can make. It started innocently enough in 1973. I was 29 years old, newly married, and terrified of failing. My father had lost everything in the recession, and I watched him crumble under the weight of financial ruin. He became a shell of himself, a broken man who couldn't look his family in the eye. I made a promise to myself that night, sitting at his bedside in that rundown apartment. I swore I would never let that happen to me. I would work harder than anyone else. I would build a fortress of security around my family. The overtime started small, an extra hour here, a Saturday morning there. My wife Sarah didn't mind at first. She understood we needed the money, especially with our first child on the way. I remember kissing her goodbye on those early mornings, promising it was temporary, just until we got ahead, just until we had a cushion, just until I got that next promotion. But temporary has a way of becoming permanent when you're driven by fear, and I was terrified of ending up like my father. By the time my son Michael was born, I was working 60-hour weeks regularly. I missed his first steps because I was closing a deal across town. Sarah called me at the office, her voice trembling with excitement, begging me to come home. But I had a meeting I couldn't reschedule. I told myself I was doing this for him, building a future where he'd never want for anything. I thought I was being a good father. I thought providing meant presence through a paycheck rather than presence in the moment. The pattern deepened over the years. When my daughter Emma came along 3 years later, I was already the go-to guy for overtime at my company. Management loved me because I never said no. My colleagues resented me because I made them look bad. My family, they just learned to expect my absence. Birthday parties happened without me. School plays went unattended. Family dinners became a table set for 3 with an empty chair that everyone stopped commenting on because commenting hurt too much. I justified it all with numbers. Our savings account grew fat and comfortable. We moved to a bigger house in a better neighborhood. The kids went to private schools. We took 1 vacation a year, though I usually worked from the hotel room while they explored without me. On paper, I was winning. In reality, I was losing everything that actually mattered. But I couldn't see it then. Fear is a powerful lens that distorts everything you look at. Sarah tried to reach me for years. She'd leave notes on my briefcase asking me to come home earlier. She'd plan special dinners that would grow cold while I finished just one more thing at the office. I remember her crying on our 15th anniversary because I'd canceled our plans to cover for a colleague who was sick. I bought her an expensive necklace the next day, thinking jewelry could substitute for time. She wore it once, and I never saw it again. The worst part is that I felt righteous about it all. I looked down on fathers who left work at 5 o'clock sharp. I thought they were lazy, uncommitted, destined to fail. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor, my 70-hour weeks like a Purple Heart from some corporate war. At company gatherings, I'd brag about my dedication while other men talked about coaching their kids' soccer teams. I didn't understand that they were winning at life while I was winning at work. And work is a game that never truly ends. My body started sending warnings in my late 40s. Chest pains, high blood pressure, chronic stress that manifested in every muscle and joint. My doctor told me to slow down, but I couldn't hear him over the voice of my father's ghost whispering that security was always just one more paycheck away. I took pills to manage the symptoms and kept working. I thought I was tough. I thought I was providing. I thought I was doing what men were supposed to do. By the time I turned 50, I'd been Employee of the Year 7 times. I'd received every performance bonus, every recognition award, every pat on the back corporate America could offer. My boss called me indispensable. My colleagues called me a machine. My son, now 21 and graduating from college, called me on a Tuesday afternoon. He was getting married in 3 months. He was formal, polite, distant. He said he hoped I could make it to the wedding, but he understood if work was too busy. That's when I first felt it, a small crack in the armor I'd built around my heart. I did make it to Michael's wedding. I took 2 days off, which felt like pulling teeth from my own skull. I sat in the third row at the ceremony, watching my son marry a woman I'd only met twice. During the father-son dance, he was stiff in my arms, going through the motions because tradition demanded it. We swayed awkwardly to a song I didn't recognize while Sarah watched from her table with tears streaming down her face. I thought they were tears of joy. Years later, she told me they were tears of grief for all the moments we'd already buried. Emma's rebellion started when she was 15. She dyed her hair purple, pierced her nose, started dating boys I never met because I was never home to meet them. Sarah handled it all alone, sitting up during sleepless nights waiting for our daughter to come home. I was traveling for work, closing deals in cities I can't even remember now. When I did come home, I'd lecture Emma about responsibility and making good choices. She'd look at me with eyes full of contempt and ask what I knew about being present enough to make any choices at all. The promotions kept coming. By 55, I was senior vice president. Corner office, personal assistant, salary that would have made my younger self weep with relief. I had security beyond anything my father could have imagined. My retirement accounts were overflowing. My stock portfolio was diversified and strong. On paper, I'd achieved everything I'd set out to accomplish. But Emma stopped calling. Michael's calls became quarterly check-ins, brief and procedural. Sarah and I lived like roommates, polite strangers sharing a mortgage and a last name. I remember the day I realized Sarah had built an entire life without me. It was a Thursday evening, one of the rare nights I came home before 9. She was getting ready to go out, wearing a dress I'd never seen, laughing on the phone with someone whose name I didn't recognize. She had book clubs and charity committees and friends who had dinners together every week. She'd learned to paint, and the house was full of canvases I'd never noticed. She'd created a whole world in the spaces where I should have been, and I was just a ghost, haunting the edges of it. We divorced when I was 62. It was civilized, almost businesslike. She didn't ask for much because there was nothing left to fight for. We divided assets with the cold efficiency of a corporate merger. She moved to a condo by the beach, a place filled with light and laughter when I visited to sign papers. I stayed in our big house with its 5 empty bedrooms and walls full of awards. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but the real reason was simpler. She'd spent 33 years married to a man who was never really there. My health declined after the divorce. The stress I'd been managing with pills and denial finally caught up with me. I had my first heart attack at 64, mild enough that I was back at work within 3 weeks. My doctor was furious, told me I was playing Russian roulette with my life. But what else did I have? Work was the only thing I'd cultivated, the only relationship I'd maintained. My children were strangers. My ex-wife had moved on. The office was the only place where I still mattered, where people still needed me. I worked until I was 71. They threw me a retirement party with sheet cake and forced speeches about my dedication. People who barely knew me said nice things that felt hollow. I looked around that conference room at faces I'd seen for decades but never really connected with, and I realized I'd spent 42 years building professional relationships instead of personal ones. I'd chosen transactions over connections, believing that success at work would somehow translate to success at life. I was so wrong it makes my chest hurt to think about it. The first year of retirement nearly killed me. I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd wake up at 5:30 out of habit, put on a suit out of muscle memory, and then remember I had nowhere to go. I tried golf, but I'd never learned to play because I was always working. I tried volunteering, but I didn't know how to work without the structure of deadlines and performance reviews. I was lost. A man who'd spent his entire life defining himself by his job, suddenly stripped of the only identity he'd ever known. Michael had his first child when I was 73, a daughter named Sophie. They lived 3 states away, and I wasn't invited to be in the delivery room. I wasn't asked to come help in those first overwhelming weeks. I received a text message with a photo and her birth statistics, the kind of announcement you'd send to a distant relative you felt obligated to inform. I booked a flight to meet her when she was 2 months old. I held my granddaughter for exactly 15 minutes before she started crying and reaching for her father. She didn't know me. Why would she? I was a stranger. Emma got married at City Hall when she was 32. I found out about it on Facebook 3 weeks after it happened. She'd married a woman named Rebecca, and they looked radiantly happy in the photos that mutual friends commented on. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even told it was happening. When I called to ask why, Emma's voice was tired, not angry. She said she didn't see the point in inviting someone who'd never shown up before. She said she'd stopped expecting me to be there so long ago that my absence didn't even register anymore. That hurt more than anger would have. I started therapy when I was 75. My doctor insisted after my second heart attack. The therapist was a woman in her 40s named Dr. Chen, and she had a way of asking questions that stripped away all my carefully constructed justifications. She asked me what I was running from all those years. I told her I was running towards security, not away from anything. She smiled sadly and said that people who are running towards something don't sprint for 30 years straight. She was right. I was running from my father's failure, from poverty, from the terror of not being enough. The sessions were brutal. Dr. Chen made me track how I'd spent my time over the decades. We calculated that I'd worked approximately 85,000 hours of overtime. 85,000 hours. That's nearly 10 years of my life spent in an office instead of with my family. If I'd worked normal hours, I would have been home for dinner 7,000 times. I would have been present for countless bedtimes, homework sessions, heart-to-heart conversations. I traded 10 years of life for money I never actually needed. She asked me what I bought with all that overtime. I listed the houses, the cars, the private schools, the vacations Sarah took without me. Then she asked what it cost me. I couldn't speak for the rest of that session. The cost was Michael's first steps and Emma's school plays. The cost was Sarah's hand in mine during movie nights that never happened. The cost was watching my children grow up through annual Christmas photos instead of daily presents. The cost was everything that actually matters in a human life. I tried to reconnect with my children in my late 70s. I sent long emails explaining myself, apologizing, begging for another chance. Michael responded politely but distantly. He said he forgave me, but that forgiveness didn't mean proximity. He had his own family now, his own life, and he'd learned long ago how to live without a father's presence. Emma didn't respond for 6 months. When she finally did, she said she needed me to understand that reconciliation wasn't about grand gestures or explanations. It was about showing up consistently. And I'd proven over 50 years that consistency wasn't something I was capable of. I started showing up anyway. I drove 3 states over to Michael's house once a month. I'd sit awkwardly in his living room, playing with Sophie and her younger brother James, children who saw me as a friendly stranger rather than a grandfather. Michael was cordial, but guarded. His wife Lauren would make polite conversation while clearly wondering why this old man kept appearing on their doorstep. But I kept showing up, month after month, even though every visit felt like swallowing glass. With Emma, it was harder. She lived locally, but her walls were higher. I'd invite her to lunch and she'd decline. I'd send gifts that went unacknowledged. Finally, after a year of rejection, she agreed to coffee. We sat across from each other at a cafe downtown, and she told me the truth I'd been avoiding. She said she'd spent her entire childhood feeling invisible to me. She said she'd acted out, gotten in trouble, did everything she could think of to get my attention, and I never even noticed. She said the worst part wasn't my absence. It was my presence at moments when I'd show up and criticize without ever having earned the right to have an opinion about her life. I listened without defending myself. That's what Dr. Chen had taught me, to listen without making excuses, to sit with the discomfort of what I'd done without trying to justify it. Emma cried, and I cried with her. She said she didn't know if we could ever have a real relationship, but she was willing to try if I was willing to do the actual work. Not the work I was good at, spreadsheets and deals and promotions, but the hard work of being vulnerable, consistent, and present. I promised her I would try. For the first time in my life, I made a promise about showing up instead of providing. Sarah and I started having monthly dinners when I was 78. It was awkward at first. 2 people who'd once shared everything now struggling to find common ground. But slowly, over pasta and wine, we built something new. Not a romantic relationship, that ship had sailed decades ago, but a friendship based on honesty. She told me about her life, her painting, her book club, the man she'd been dating for 5 years. I was surprised to find I was happy for her. She'd built a beautiful life in the ruins I'd left behind. She also told me hard truths. She said there were years when she'd fantasized about leaving, about taking the kids and starting over. She said she'd stayed because she believed in the vows she'd made, but also because she'd been conditioned to believe that a providing husband was enough. She said she wished she'd left sooner, given herself and the kids a chance to be with someone who was actually present. Hearing that hurt, but I deserved to hear it. I'd wasted her best years, her youth, her dreams, all while thinking I was being a good husband because the bills were paid. The regret is a physical thing now, a weight in my chest that never lifts. I lie awake at night thinking about all the moments I missed. Michael's little league games, Emma's art shows, Saturday mornings that could have been spent making pancakes instead of reviewing reports. I think about Sarah, young and beautiful and full of hope, waiting for a husband who never came home. I think about the man I could have been if I hadn't been so afraid. The fear that drove me, that terror of ending up like my father, turned me into something worse. At least my father in his brokenness was present. At least he was there. I attend Sophie's soccer games now, every Saturday that my health allows. I'm the old man in the folding chair on the sidelines, cheering too loudly for a granddaughter who still doesn't quite know what to call me. Sometimes she waves at me after scoring a goal. Those waves are small victories that I treasure more than any promotion I ever received. Michael watches me watching her, and I can see him processing it all, wondering where this grandfather was when he needed a father. I can't give him an answer that makes it better. All I can do is show up now. Emma and I meet for coffee every other week now. We talk about her work as a graphic designer, her wife Rebecca's bakery, the life they're building together. She started sharing more with me, small confidences that feel like gifts I don't deserve. Last month, she told me they're thinking about adopting a child. She asked if I thought I could be a better grandfather than I was a father. I told her honestly that I'm trying to be, that I'm learning what presence actually means. She touched my hand across the table and said, "Trying counts for something." The company I gave 30 years to was sold and absorbed into a larger corporation 5 years ago. My division no longer exists. The building where I spent more time than I spent in my own home has been demolished to make room for luxury condos. All those hours, all that sacrifice, and it amounted to nothing permanent. The company moved on without me the day I retired. They replaced me within 3 weeks. The projects I thought were crucial are forgotten. The deals I closed are footnotes in spreadsheets nobody looks at anymore. I was never indispensable. I was just another worker who confused presence with importance. I found my old performance reviews in a box last year while cleaning out the garage. Reading them was like reading about a stranger. Best employee, exceeds expectations, invaluable asset. The praise that once filled me with pride now reads like an obituary for a life I could have lived. Each accolade represents a choice I made to be at work instead of home. Each bonus represents a birthday party I missed. I burned that box in the fireplace and watched 30 years of corporate validation turn to ash. It took 10 minutes to burn what took 3 decades to accumulate. My health continues to decline. The doctors say my heart is tired, worn out from decades of stress I refuse to manage. I have medication I take 3 times a day, a diet I mostly follow, restrictions on everything I once took for granted. I can't travel anymore. I get winded walking to the mailbox. My body is failing me the way I failed my family, slowly and then all at once. The irony isn't lost on me. I spent my life working to ensure security and comfort in my old age, and now I'm too broken to enjoy any of it. I think about my father often now that I'm old myself. I judged him so harshly for his failure, for his inability to provide. But he was there for me in ways I never was for my children. He taught me to ride a bike. He came to my school concerts. He was present in his failure in ways I never was in my success. I've started to wonder if I misunderstood everything. Maybe the real failure wasn't his financial ruin. Maybe the real failure was mine, choosing security over connection, choosing fear over love, choosing the illusion of control over the messy reality of being truly present for the people who needed me. Last Christmas was different. For the first time in decades, everyone came to my house. Michael and his family, Emma and Rebecca, even Sarah stopped by with her partner. We had a full table, noise and laughter and the chaos of children playing with new toys. I mostly sat in my chair and watched, too tired to participate much, but grateful just to be in the room. Sophie brought me a drawing she'd made, a picture of our family with me included. I'm a stick figure on the edge, but I'm there. That drawing is on my refrigerator now. It's worth more than every award I ever received. Emma announced that night that she and Rebecca had been approved to adopt. They're bringing home a little boy in the spring, a 3-year-old named Marcus who's been in foster care. She looked at me when she made the announcement, and I understood the question in her eyes. Would I show up for this child? Would I be the grandfather to Marcus that I failed to be as a father? I promised her I would. I promised I'd tell Marcus stories, teach him to fish, be present for his bedtime routine on the nights I'm invited. I promised things I should have promised decades ago to my own children. Michael pulled me aside that night before they left. We stood in the kitchen and he said something I'll never forget. He said he'd spent most of his life angry at me, then indifferent, and now he was just sad. Sad for me, for all I missed, for the relationships I sacrificed. But he also said he was grateful I was trying now. He said Sophie talks about me, asks when we're going to see Grandpa again. He said it matters that I show up, even if it can't undo the past. He hugged me, really hugged me, for years. I cried on his shoulder like a child. Sarah stayed after everyone left, helping me clean up. We washed dishes in comfortable silence, and then she said something that broke me. She said she'd been angry at me for so long, but now she just felt sorry for me. She said I'd missed out on the best parts of life, the daily small moments that make existence meaningful. She said she'd had 40 years to build new happiness, to fill her life with presence and connection. But I'd lost those same 40 years to fear and work, and now I'm at the end with so little time left to make up for it. She kissed my cheek before she left, a gesture of compassion rather than romance. That small kindness destroyed me more than anger ever could. I've been writing letters lately. Letters to my children, to Sarah, to my grandchildren, even to little Marcus, who I haven't met yet. Letters Bale read after I'm gone, trying to explain what I couldn't articulate while I was too busy working. I write about my regrets, about the man I wish I'd been, about the moments I'd take back if I could. Dr. Chen says this is part of the process, making peace with what cannot be changed. But some nights I wonder if these letters are just another way of trying to provide something, words instead of presence, when what they always needed was simply me. I met Marcus 2 months ago. Emma and Rebecca brought him to my house on a Sunday afternoon. He's small for 3, with enormous brown eyes that have seen too much already. He hid behind Emma's legs at first, peeking out at me with uncertainty. I got down on the floor, which took effort, my body protested, and I showed him a toy train that used to be Michael's. We played together for 2 hours, building tracks and making train sounds. When they left, he waved goodbye and called me Grandpa. That word, in his small voice, felt like absolution I haven't earned yet. I think about time differently now, not in terms of quarters and fiscal years, but in moments I have left. Every Saturday with Sophie is precious. Every coffee with Emma matters. Every phone call with Michael, even when they're brief and awkward, is a gift. I'm racing against a clock I can hear ticking, trying to accumulate moments that matter before my worn-out heart gives up completely. It's exhausting and beautiful and terrifying, this late attempt at being present. I'm learning what my family already knew, that presence is a practice, not a destination. My neighbor found me collapsed in my driveway 3 weeks ago, another heart episode, less severe than the others, but a warning nonetheless. I spent 4 days in the hospital with machines beeping and nurses checking vitals. Emma came every day, sitting by my bed, reading or working on her laptop, just being there. Michael drove through the night to sit with me. Sarah brought flowers and stayed for hours, telling me stories about her grandchildren from her partner's family. They showed up for me in ways I never showed up for them, and the generosity of it breaks my heart over and over again. The doctor was blunt after this latest episode. He said I have months, maybe a year if I'm lucky. My heart is giving out, the cumulative damage from decades of stress and poor self-care catching up with me. I asked him if I'd lived differently, worked less, stressed less, if I'd have more time now. He said probably, but there's no way to know for sure. What I do know is that I spent my healthy years building security for a future I won't live long enough to enjoy. The irony would be funny if it weren't so tragic. I told my children about the prognosis over dinner at Emma's house. We sat around her kitchen table, the same table where her family shares meals every night, and I watched their faces process the news. Michael got angry, asking why I'd waited so long to take care of myself, to be present, to try. Emma cried quietly, and Rebecca held her hand. I apologized again, knowing apologies are inadequate, but offering them anyway. Emma said something profound then. She said, "At least we have now. At least I'm here in whatever time is left." She said that matters, even if it can't undo the past. We've started having family dinners every Sunday now, sometimes at my house, sometimes at Emma's, once a month at Michael's, despite the distance. We cook together, eat together, let the grandchildren make messes and noise. I mostly watch, too tired to do much else, but I'm present. I'm there in the room, engaged, asking questions, listening to stories. Sophie tells me about school, James shows me his drawings, Marcus climbs into my lap and falls asleep during the adult conversation. These ordinary moments feel sacred to me now, precious beyond measure. I've been giving things away, all the stuff I accumulated over the years, the expensive furniture and electronics and collectibles that I thought represented success. I'm keeping almost nothing. I gave Michael my father's watch, the only thing of value my father owned. I gave Emma my mother's jewelry, pieces that should have gone to Sarah, but she insisted Emma have them. I'm setting up college funds for the grandchildren, trying to give them something useful rather than burdensome. But mostly I'm trying to give them memories in these final months, presents that might partially fill the deficit I created. Sarah and I had a long conversation last week about forgiveness. I asked her if she'd forgiven me, really forgiven me, for all those wasted years. She was quiet for a long time before answering. She said forgiveness wasn't a switch she could flip. It was something she'd worked toward in therapy for years. She said she'd forgiven the young man who was terrified and traumatized by his father's failure, but forgiving the older man who kept making the same choice year after year, decade after decade, that was harder. She said she was still working on it, and she asked if I'd forgiven myself. I told her no, I don't think I ever will. Dr. Chen asked me in our last session what I'd tell my younger self if I could go back. I said I'd tell him that his father's failure wasn't about money, it was about losing hope. I'd tell him that security isn't found in a bank account, it's found in relationships and presence and showing up for the people who love you. I'd tell him that enough is a real place you can reach if you're not running from ghosts. I'd tell him that his children will measure his success not in promotions or paychecks, but in moments and memories, and whether he was there when they needed him. I'd tell him all this, but I don't think he would have listened. Fear makes us deaf to wisdom. I'm writing this on a Tuesday morning in April. The cherry blossoms outside my window are in full bloom, and I can hear birds singing. Simple things I never noticed during all those years of rushing to work before dawn. I have hospice nurses who come 3 times a week now. My body is shutting down in the way bodies do when they've been pushed too hard for too long. But my mind is clear, and I need to say these final things while I still can. If you're reading this or listening to this and you're working 60, 70, 80 hours a week because you're building something or chasing security or running from fear, please stop. Please look up from your desk and see what's right in front of you. Your children won't be small forever. Your partner won't wait forever. Your parents won't be here forever. The moments you're missing right now, they don't come back. No amount of money, no level of success, no title or promotion will ever compensate for the irreplaceable time you're trading away. I've learned that presence is the only currency that actually matters in a human life. Not money, not status, not achievement. Presence, being there in the mundane moments, showing up for the ordinary days, sitting at the dinner table, reading bedtime stories, having conversations that go nowhere important but build everything that matters. I missed thousands of these moments, and I would trade every dollar I ever earned, every award I ever received, every hour of overtime I ever worked for just one more ordinary Tuesday with my children when they were small. The metrics we use to measure success in our work lives are all wrong when applied to our personal lives. There's no performance review for being a good parent. There's no bonus for showing up to your kid's soccer game. There's no promotion for having dinner with your family every night. But these are the things that actually matter. These are the things that people remember at funerals, that children carry with them into adulthood, that define whether a life was truly successful or just professionally accomplished. I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm not saying ambition is bad or that providing for your family doesn't matter. It does matter. But there's a difference between working hard and working obsessively. There's a difference between providing and hiding. I wasn't just working to provide. I was using work to avoid the vulnerability of being truly present. Work was safe, predictable, measurable. Family was messy, emotional, uncertain. So I chose the illusion of control over the reality of connection. Emma came by yesterday with Marcus. He's comfortable with me now, climbs right into my lap without hesitation. He brought me a drawing he made at preschool, a picture of our family, with me included, just like Sophie's drawing from Christmas. These children are giving me a grace I don't deserve, accepting me into their lives despite my decades of absence from their parents' lives. Emma says she's pregnant, that she and Rebecca are having a baby girl in the fall. I won't be here to meet her, but I'll leave letters for her too. Another grandchild who'll never know me, but at least this time it won't be because I chose work over family. Michael called this morning. We talked for an hour, the longest conversation we've had in years. He told me about his childhood, his memories of waiting for me to come home, of hearing my car in the driveway and running to the door, only to watch me walk past him to my home office. He said he learned to stop waiting, to stop expecting, to build his life around my absence. But he also said these last 2 years have mattered. He said Sophie will remember me, that I've given her something his childhood didn't have, a grandfather who shows up. He said that has to count for something, and I'm choosing to believe him. I think about legacy differently than I used to. I thought legacy was what you built, what you achieved, what you left behind in terms of wealth or accomplishments. But real legacy is who you shaped through your presence, the memories you created, the way you made people feel. My professional legacy has already been erased, the company sold, the building demolished, my work forgotten. But my family legacy is still being written in these final chapters. Sophie will remember the old man who came to her soccer games. Marcus will remember playing trains on the floor. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be. Sarah sat with me last night. We looked through old photo albums, pictures from when we were young and still believed in forever. She pointed to a photo from our wedding day, both of us so young and hopeful, and she said she mourned the life we could have had together. But she also said she's glad we found our way to this friendship, this honesty. She said she's forgiven me, finally and fully, not because I deserve it, but because holding on to anger was poisoning her ability to be fully present in her own life. Her forgiveness is a gift I'll carry into whatever comes next. If there's a message in my story, it's this: time is the only resource you can't earn back. You can make more money, you can find another job, you can recover from professional failures, but you can't recover lost time. You can't get back the years you spent absent from the lives of people who needed you. The moments you miss are gone forever, and at the end, that's what you'll regret. Not the promotion you didn't get, not the deal you didn't close, but the soccer games you missed, the dinners you skipped, the bedtimes you weren't there for. I'm 81 years old, dying in a house full of awards that mean nothing, grieving for a life I could have lived if I hadn't been so afraid. Don't make my mistake. Don't let fear steal your life while you're busy trying to secure it. The people you love won't remember how hard you worked. They'll remember whether you were there, and I wasn't. Until it was almost too late. Learn from my regret. Choose presence. Choose love. Choose the messy, beautiful, irreplaceable moments of actually being there. That's where life happens. That's where everything that matters exists. I know that now. I just wish I'd known it sooner.